William Wallace, the newest infantry open field commander, has been in Rise of Kingdoms for a couple of days now, and today I think it is time that I update my Rise of Kingdoms open field tier list to include William and show off his strength. So if you're interested in the new position of both infantry commanders on the open field, and also my personal opinions on how they've shifted the meta, which commanders have been ranked down and which ones have been ranked up, you want to stick around to the end of the video. Now, as always, when it comes to one of my open field tier lists, we'll begin with the criteria, and the criteria for this is really simple. It is the commander doing good on the field right now? Are they trading good? Do they have really good debuffs? And are they the meta right now? They may not be a good investment, but they may be good on the field. A very, very good example of this, and something we're going to see today, is Boudica Prime. On my investment list, she was ranked at around the C tier, but in terms of field performance, she's going to be around that A or B tier. So you'll notice that today, a lot of commanders who may not be the best investments will get higher ranks, and some commanders who might be better investments may even get a slightly lower rank, but they have a bit more future potential. So that is what we're looking at when it comes to the open field list. It is the here and the now, not really the future. I'm not too concerned with that, and really I'm not too interested with this list specifically. I do have an investment list if you want to see that, but this is my field performance, just so we know which commanders are in the meta right now and which commanders maybe aren't so much. Now here is the tier list we're going to be using today, and as you can see, there are 5 total tiers. The best, I mean, that's self-explanatory. These commanders are the best of the best. There is nothing better in the game. Very good. These commanders are pretty much there. They're usually a really good secondary to one of the best commanders, or they're really good for a second march of their troop type. Whatever it be, they do trade amazingly, and they're just very decent commanders. Average, you could get some value out of these commanders. They've got their field situations where they work, but they often pretty well average. They're not too amazing. Most people would rather skip them, and they just aren't going to do you too much nowadays. Meh, these commanders are just that. They're not the best at all. They don't do too much. They might have 1 or 2 advantages, but you'd never really run them. And Garbo are the worst commanders. They are literally, well, garbage, and I would never really use them on the field. Starting off with Nevsky, though, he's going to go into very good. He's probably the best Cav investment purely because he's one of the better Cav commanders, but he's not the best performing commander in the game by any margin, and I don't think he is going to remain in terms of just his open field strength in general. So Nevsky is decent on the field, he's definitely very strong, but I don't know about putting him as the best open field commander of all time. I wouldn't put that right now, he just isn't at that tier, but he is definitely quite strong. Alex, he's still doing pretty good, I want to say, with Lil Chair, but because of William, we've noticed that Alex's overall performance is down, since you would just, well, you'd run William instead of him. So Alex, he's pretty okay, but now we've seen William come in. William kind of does pretty good against Alex's, and Alex is losing that place with Leo Chair, so his other marches are nowhere near as good as, well, Alex with Leo Chair. So if you put William with Leo Chair, your Alex becomes completely useless and loses a lot of field value. Another average is Attila. He's just still got very good anti-swarm. He still works decently. He's just not the most overpowered. I mean, well, let's just be real. Moctezuma is useless. Chandragupta, he's going to go in meh. His debuffs are okay nowadays, his damage is okay, but he's nowhere near as meta as he really used to be. CJ, same thing, he's really meh nowadays. Not much going for him, not many debuffs, not many crazy stats. Don't really see him enough on the open field to give a full judgment, so I think meh tier is probably the best one. All the gathering commanders, like usual, will just go into the garbage tier since, well, they're not meant for the field at all. They're meant to gather, they're very good at doing that niche, but I think there's no more explanation needed since they are just, well, gathering commanders. I'm going to put Gilgamesh in the meh as well. Decent debuff, no damage, really just isn't up to par nowadays. I'd only use him maybe in a 7th Archer March, but that's super, super rare and you won't really see that. Belisarius, he's very good if you're running 5 or more marches. He's got decent trades, he's got pretty good debuffs, and he's not a bad commander by any means, but he isn't one of the best. Xiao Xiao, he's meh. He's okay on the field. He can do good in KVK 1 and 2, which isn't a very big concern for me anymore because they're going to restrict KVK 1 and 2 a lot for older accounts. But he is still okay in those KVKs, and his average in Season of Conquest probably a little bit weaker than average, so that's why he's in that meh tier. YSS, would never use him on the field. Edward of Woodstock, he's meh on the field. YSG, he's average nowadays from personal experience using him at least. he's slowly starting to fall off. His damage isn't as meta as it really used to be, and well, besides damage, he has just about nothing going for him. So YSG, he's still pretty decent, but he's not at that very good tier, and he's not up there with some of those other commanders. Elcid is garbage, Charlemagne is garbage, Frederick is garbage, Hannibal Barca is garbage. That's a lot of garbage commanders. That's also not Hannibal Barca. And then we've got Honda. Honda's also average. I mean, Honda's got some okay damage, he's got some okay utility, and he's an okay secondary to pretty much every single commander, but he's just that. He's average, he's okay, he can work, but he isn't going to be your number one choice, and I wouldn't go out of my way to run a Honda over pretty much any other commander in any tiers above him. So that's why he's getting that average tier. Bertrand, he does average nowadays. He could be arguably a meh commander. I wouldn't be too surprised by that, but he'll be towards the bottom of the average tier. Scipio, he's very good still. I wouldn't put him in the best anymore. I mean, his debuff is still very nice. His damage is still very nice. But again, I think William has kind of pushed him out of that top tier just because William has an overall better field performance with Leo Chair than any other infantry commander. So you'll notice Scipio not as hot or not as used and definitely not as strong as it used to be, but still a very strong commander and a fairly decent investment. Guan Yu open field, he's average as well. Now, the only thing he's got going for him is his debuff, really. His damage factor is pretty much on standard for what we see nowadays. It's nowhere near anything hectic like it used to be, so he's really just an average commander. Constantine for the field is pretty meh. Joan, she's still in the best tier. I don't think Joan's going to lose value with the next Cav. I think the next Cav will probably be a replacement, or at least some way to change Nevsky. But Joan's got AoE, it's a double AoE, she's got fairly okay stats, and overall she's still probably the better trading of the cavalry commanders, because without Joan, Nevsky is pretty much useless, really. He's okay with some other Cavs, but really it comes down to that Nevsky Joan being the carry of that combination. Nebu, he's average nowadays, can be used, but not very amazing. Pretty much he's just becoming outdated. Suleiman's rubbish. Scipio Emilius, he's just going to be average because when you get him, he's brand new. Once he comes out, he can be brand new. Yes, some of his skills are rally, but his stats are going to be up to the meta. So he'll be good for maybe 2 or 3 months, and he'll be in that meh tier. But as time progresses, he's definitely going to move down. I think probably a year or so after, he's definitely going to fall down. And we'll see soon that I reckon my next tier list, at least, Bertrand is probably going to be in the meh tier, and really he could be in there now. So a lot of these rally commanders, even though they look decent on the field at the start, if they're not specifically very good for the field, for example, like a Shirbanipal or Gorgo, they're not going to get a lot of long-term value. So keep that in mind. Right now he's at the average tier, but over time, we're going to be knocking him down, and he's going to end up in that meh and garbage tier much faster than a lot of these other commanders. Flavius is meh on the field. Leo Chair, I mean the best, arguably the best in the game, maybe second only to Zulang. It depends on your perspective on that, but he's definitely one of the best, if not the best commanders in the whole game. Zenobia, I'd never run on the field. Cyrus, he's okay. I mean, you can use him for an anti-swarm archer march. That's the only value I get out of him nowadays, and even then it's really not that amazing. Gorgo, she's average. She could be at the very good tier if William wasn't so prevalent, but at the moment with other pairings in terms of her, like with the Scipio, it's not going to be the most amazing. Is it going to be bad? No, but Gorgo with Scipio, not too hot. And in terms of other smite pairings like William with Gorgo, again, they're not too amazing. So I'm not a very big fan of the Gorgo at the moment in terms of open field performance, but she can still do pretty good. So she's probably going to be the literal top of the average tier, just under that very good tier, and she's probably going to stay in that tier for a long time. She may even move back up if we see even more smite commanders, and she might get a bit of a resurgence in value. Charles Martel, unless you're using him as a mega anti-swarm march, is not the best, but if you are, he can do pretty average, which is why he's going to go in that tier. Ethelfled, she's not very amazing nowadays. Hache Bing is a very solid cav commander, good for 2 marches, even good for 1 march. Belisarius is best pairing by far, and just a overall strong commander. Mehmed is just really similar to Honda. Very good secondary to everything, but not at that very good tier, which is why he's just in the average. Harold, he's still fairly decent. Not a number 1 pick, but he is decent, which is why he goes into the average. And Caesar can work with, well, as a replacement to Mehmed or Honda, with a commander that has super fast rage, such as Hao Bing. So he's a bit of a niche, but when you can get him to work, he's still fairly okay in this meta, but he's super rare, and you won't really see him or even need to use him for that matter. William, I mean, I'm going to put him in the best. He's currently the best infantry commander with Liu Che. He's currently the strongest infantry commander besides Liu Che, and he's really just a meta commander. Trading very good all around, much better than any of Liu Che's other pairings, at least 10 to 20% better. So that means he is just, well, the best in the game. He beats Scipio Africanus, he beats most commanders from his pure strength and his, well, newness to the game. So William, very powerful commander, and very interesting to see how strong he really is. Genghis Khan, he's meh nowadays. Jadwiga is useless on the field. Jan Ziska is also meh. Eleanor, she's pretty meh. She was never very good on the field. Even now, she's just at like that almost end like rubbish tier, to be honest. Amana Tori, she's also really in that lower tier. At the moment with Artemisia, she's not the best, and she's really got no other pairing. So Amana Tori, she's in the meh tier, probably on track to move down to that garbage tier over the next coming commander cycles at least. Mulan, she's still pretty average with her buffs. If you want to run her as a 7th March, it can work, and it's a very good supporting March. So she can work, but she's really just there to tank with Trajan, and it's not going to be one of the best marches that you run. It's just going to be one that is there to take a hit for your other marches, but it can still bring you a little bit of value. That being said, just like the very good and the best commanders, they're always going to come before that Mulan, and in nowadays, 7 DPS marches seems to outperform 6 DPS marches with 1 support march. Lu Bu is garbage, nothing more needs to be said. Ragnar, I mean, he would have been in the meh tier if Takeda and Attila didn't have a relic, but because they do, Ragnar is missing out on a lot of that extra strength, so he's in the meh tier. His relic is decent, but he's just not going to be a very good substitute to Attila, because Attila's relic is going to help him outperform Ragnar. So that means Attila is going to go in the average as the better commander for the Attila Takeda March. Before, I would say they're interchangeable, but nowadays, I'd just rather get the Takeda because it has a museum relic and already has arguably the same number of stats as Ragnar. So Attila is worthy of that meh tier, sorry, at the average tier, but Ragnar is just going to be in that second lowest tier because his relic is, well, it's just more expensive and he's going to be slightly weaker than Takeda, so why get Ragnar when you can get Takeda since they're pretty much just the same price. Barbara, he's going to go into the average tier. Same thing with Gajamada, they're both just average commanders in terms of range just because they're not the most overpowered of the 4 range commanders. They can do good if you're running them in a march together, if you're running them as a unique combination, or you're running 2 siege marches, they can work, there's no doubt about it, but that's very specific, and they're not going to be the best of the siege marches. The best is going to go to Gonzalo, and to my knowledge, also Margaret. So that is the best current march, to my knowledge, for range commanders, and it's going to be very good. From what I've seen with range commanders, and if I'm correct about that pairing, they do trade very amazingly. From the testing I've done with the shifting gears, at least, when I was on the Lilith test server, they did very interesting. And from personal KVK experience, these range commanders can get really good trades only in the right situation though. So they're very good for the niche that they fill, and they are good field performers, but if you don't have the open field, at least presence, they're going to get demolished and trade horrifically. So it's really a bit of a game of luck there, a bit of a game of relying on your kingdom when you play ranged, even more than when you have an archer account like mine, but that doesn't mean they can't do amazingly, and when siege commanders do good, they do very, very, very good. So when they do good, they're the best in the game, but when they don't, they're arguably some of the worst in the game. Leonidas, he is probably in the garbage tier. I would never run him. Artemisia, she's still okay with Boudica Prime, but it's not a number 1 pickup, and I probably wouldn't be doing it. Speaking of Boudica Prime, she's also in the average tier. I know it hurts me to do it, but Boudica, she isn't as strong as she used to be, simply put. There's new archers coming out soon, which obviously didn't affect this ranking because this is open field performance, but she just isn't as strong as she used to be. She's not as tanky, she's very, very squishy, and a lot of Cavs can melt her because Cavs are very meta, they're kind of dominating her, and with William Wallace nubbing out, Boudica's even weaker because now she can't counter infantry as well. So Artemisia and Boudica taking hits there. We'll probably see Artemisia fall down to the meh tier as we see new archer commanders. Pakal also going to go into the average with Harold, which is to be expected. Henry going to go into the average as well with YSG. They're a decent march for like 3 archer marches, but they're just not your number 1 pick. Tarek also going to go into average, pretty good with Sargon. Also, speaking of Sargon, I'll just chuck him in average as well. They're both good for like 3 or so infantry marches, but again, they're just not going to be the number 1 pick, and there are a lot more stronger and, well, arguably better infantry commanders who will come before Tarek and Sargon. So you'll notice, A, they deal direct damage factor, which is not the thing for infantry right now, and B, they just are not as powerful as really they both used to be. Zulang, he's going to go into the meta tier. I mean, he's the best of the best. There is no commander even close to his tier, and he's just one of the strongest in the game. Ditto is useless on the open field. Heraclius is almost useless, might as well be useless. Minamoto, he's okay on the field. I can't really complain too much about him, and he's definitely a fairly solid commander. Richard, pretty much useless besides debuffs. Saladin, pretty much useless besides debuffs and a bit of buffs. Ramsey's also pretty much useless. Thutmose, also pretty much useless. Justinian, he's going to go into the average tier. He's still an okay cav commander for 3 to 4 marches, and he can trade okay if you do run him with some of the better cavalry commanders at least. So Justinian, not a bad commander by any means, but wouldn't be my number 1 pick for the open field. Pyrrhus, he's like below average. Ashurbanipal, I still think he's in the very good tier. He's got good single target damage, good AoE, and definitely if we see a new archer commander who might replace Boudica or Henry, Ashurbanipal might get an even higher boost and become a lot stronger. Hermann Prime, he's in the best tier, arguably the best debuff in the game, arguably one of the best archer commanders in the game, and I would say he's ranked at number 3, just a little bit above Joan Prime, with William ranked probably just a tad below Joan Prime just because he doesn't have an AoE. That is really the simple fact of that. Arguably, Scipio could go up a tier just because he does have that AoE, but in my opinion, this is the real best commanders in the game currently. Theodora is useless. Tomyris, she's going to go in the middle tier. I know TSN Lambo was telling me that he is quite a fan of the Tomyris march. He likes Tomyris and is memorable, but me personally, I don't see her absolute value, so I'm going to put her in that meta tier for now. She's just not as good as she used to be by any means, and I would arguably say she can hinder Hermann's performance if you get a little bit unlucky. William, he's still doing pretty good in the field. I put him in the very good tier. He still trades decent. He's still got decent debuffs. Is he used as much? No, but he is still fairly okay. Wizard Tian is useless by a mile. Trajan, similar to Mulan, very good buffing March, but just isn't going to be your number 1 pick. And finally, Zhang Yu, solid cav commander, got AoE, got a fast rage cycle, and I just would not be complaining about him. And then for the last random Liu Chair I accidentally had, he can go straight into garbage. So now here is the investment tier list, starting off with the best commanders in the game being Liu Chair, Zulang, Hermann Prime, Joan Prime, and William, all the way down to the worst commanders in the game. This is somewhat ordered. I didn't fully order it because I don't have enough time to be fully honest, but this is pretty much a good general guideline for the current open field situation of Rise of Kingdoms, which commanders are the best and which commanders are really not doing so hot or about to fall out of the meta. Now, if you found this tier list enjoyable or interesting and you want to see me do a little bit of open field fighting, maybe see some of those commanders on the field for yourself, I'll be doing an open field fight in my Kingsland at probably around 23 UTC, and we're going to go for about 4 hours. So if you want to see real open field fighting with the real troops, real deads, real things at stake in an Imperium KVK, mind you, I'm going to be fighting against an Imperium Kingdom 1365. There's a couple of those big YouTubers in there, 12-inch, Daddy Furious, who I'm very furious at, and we're just going to be fighting it out for the Kingsland. So if you want to see who wins, comment down to the live stream, 23 UTC. The link will be in the pinned comment and also in the description. Now, I just want to say, thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.